everyone, I'm Jeanette Mulvey, the editor-in-chief of Co. by U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of C-Suite to Main Street. Today, we will be talking about how to build a business around your personal brand. Now, before I get started, I want to thank our sponsors, Dell, Oracle NetSuite, Square, and Walmart Business. We thank them for their partnership in this series. I'm super excited that today I'm interviewing Nate Berkus. He's an interior designer and founder of Nate Berkus Associates. Now, you may remember him from his appearances on Oprah or his own TV show. He has product lines in retail stores across the country. He's written 2 books, and he has a new book called Foundations coming out next week. Nate is going to tell us how he built a successful and growing business while staying true to himself, his tastes, and his style. And no matter what kind of business you run, I think he'll have great advice for you. So join me in welcoming Nate. So Nate, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really glad to have you here.
Pleasure.
So, to prepare for this interview, I read your book, The Things That Matter, which I loved. And actually, one of my favorite parts of that book was when you sold your clothes. You were living in Paris, right? And you
Yeah.
sold all of your clothes. And I just thought that really speaks to the commitment that you had even then to making the life for yourself that you wanted to have. You were willing to make sacrifices. Everybody watching today is a small business owner and they are making sacrifices all the time. So you've been in business since the early 90s. Can you just first talk about the kinds of sacrifices that you've made to get yourself where you are today?
I have to be really straightforward and honest and say that I don't view any of the decisions that I've made as a sacrifice. I think that that's a question of framing. Would I have loved not to have been on an airplane or 4 different cities in the same week at times when I was in production for TV or hosting my own talk show? Would I have preferred to go on vacations with groups of friends that I couldn't because I was working? Sure. But in the end, my work is such a huge part of my identity. And I am grateful that I sort of built everything that I built up until now, because now I get to spend time with my kids who are 10 and 7. And if I was in the climb still, um, sort of in the grind, if you will, like I was 20 years ago, that would be the ultimate sacrifice for me, is not being able to spend time and witness the day to day of what goes on with my kids. But um, building my businesses, which I still continue to build, I'm very much right now even in a state of expansion in several different ways. Um, Work is work. I feel honored and grateful that I've had the opportunities and continue to get new opportunities. I really haven't viewed anything as a sacrifice.
Earlier, you and I talked about authenticity and that the key for you to building a successful business over many years that you just said is still growing was that you were always honest with your clients and you always stayed true to yourself. So can you talk a little bit more about that honesty and times where you had to tell people, look, I might not exactly know what I'm doing or I've never done this before. Can you talk about the importance of that kind of honesty?
Look, the world has changed so much since I started my business 30 years ago. Business has changed, technology has changed, but what hasn't changed is that grace goes a long way in this world. And in an elective career, and I say that about design because it's not, I'm not in medicine, I'm not in law, I sell sofas and bath mats. I'm very clear on my role, and hopefully inspire people to live better. Um, there's just too many options for people, and too many people with great talent that people can choose to work with. And so from very, very early on, I made a decision that I would always be really straightforward, that I would always be kind of the guy you wanted to meet for lunch, Or that if somebody in a corporate environment saw that their afternoon was booked with me, that it wouldn't be like, oh, I wish I had the flu. I've always been very conscious of how I want to move through the world and how I want people to feel when I'm moving through their world with them. Whether they're working for me or I'm working for them, it doesn't matter. And part of that is honesty. Part of that is having the confidence to look at somebody and say, I don't think this is a good idea for you. Or I don't think you're ever going to be happy in this home. Everything you're sharing with me, architecturally, stylistically, visually, is not what you have. So we need to reset and be honest with each other about what's achievable. I don't like yes people, not within my own organization, and certainly not. I'm not prone to flattery. I'm not prone to. I'm not taken with anything really false, whether that's my professional relationships or my personal relationships. And so, I built a business based on being me.
Yeah. In the book that I referenced before, The Things That Matter, and we are going to talk about your new book, which is coming out in November. But in the book, The Things That Matter, you talked, I don't remember which room it was, but you talked about one room that you called Simply Imperfect. And I thought, well, that really applies to running a business too, that you're never going to have a perfect day. You're never going to get everything right. So can you just talk about your philosophy on the simply imperfect business model?
Yeah,
Yes.
sure. I mean, it's interesting because I see this with young people coming into my company all the time, where they feel like they have to exude this sort of confidence and capability, but there's a falseness sometimes to that I really ping on as a business owner. I would much rather have someone just look at me across the table and say, I don't know the answer. I don't know how to do this. Will you tell me how to do this? Will you help me how to show me how to do this? Um, as opposed to someone pretending they're an expert in everything. It's like a pet peeve of mine. And I think that, it's an interesting imperfection is sort of, in my business at least, is where the beauty really comes in, really like rises to the surface, because there's not one way to design a room. There's not one correct way to structure a company. So what I've done since day one is I've hired people that I want to be around, who I think are smart and interesting and possibly smarter than me. And we we throw everything on the table. I'll say to them, I'm thinking of bringing on these consultants. What do you think? Do you think that, if they do come on, what do you think the pain points of our business are? What would you like to know to make your life easier? It's a perfectly sort of a simply imperfect room is a space that allows the space for real life to be lived in. And an simply imperfect or a perfectly imperfect organization for me allows people to function really well, to be seen, to be heard, to feel known. And I think that's how you get the best work from people.
You said that you don't like to be surrounded by yes people. And you alluded earlier that for clients, you also don't want to be a yes person. You don't want to just tell them what they want to hear. When is an instance when you really do have to just back down and give someone what they want, even if you think it's the wrong thing?
All the time. But if I've said my piece and I have, you know, explained to them that why I don't think it's a good idea, what I don't like about it, at the end of the day, I'm in the service industry. I it is not my home, it is not my money, it is theirs. And I have to respect that. And sometimes I'm wrong. Like I said, there's not one correct way to design a space. There's 10,000 different ways. And we try as a company to get to know our clients really, really well sometimes better in some ways than they know themselves. Um, we dovetail every project with this philosophy that a successful interior represents who you are, who you've been, and also who you aspire to be. But I'm not right all the time. And in the end, it's, our job is done, whether it takes a year or 2 years or 6 months, whatever, and the door closes and the client's living in that space, making memories in that space. It has nothing to do with me any longer.
Before we were recording, you told me a story about a merchandiser from Target who wanted you to create a particular color towel, lavender towel, and you really didn't want to create that towel, but you did, and it turned out it didn't sell well. It leads me to a question. I guess it's about authenticity, but I wonder if you think that your customer can tell if you're doing something that doesn't feel right to you. Like if there's a misalignment between the product or the design or the room and what you actually think was the right thing, do you think that that feeling comes through for people, or do you think it just doesn't work that way and people like a purple towel or they don't like a purple towel? Like, do things need to align with your brand consistently across all of your work in order for your business to be successful, I think is what I'm asking.
Well, there's two facets of that I want to address. One, I do think that every aspect of my brand has to be aligned with the messaging that is important to my brand. That said, if you like a purple towel, people like a purple towel. And part of what the foundation of my messaging has been, your home should reflect you, your home should tell your story. I was saying that 25 years ago. Now it's on every billboard for, tea or chocolate chips or a vacuum cleaner. But I've always believed in the power of a home and your things being able to tell your story and helping people to craft their own stories by making deeply personal decisions in their home. So, because that is the foundation of my messaging, there's really no reason for me not to respect somebody who wants a lavender towel. Would I have it in my house? No. Would my 10-year-old daughter have it in hers? Yes. And many other people. I mean, Oprah yelled at me one day. She's like, "You can't go around saying you don't like the color purple." I was like, right. But I don't. Uh, so I think that there's I I think that the customer probably wouldn't be able to tell unless it was some really crazy pattern or something, that it wasn't something that I loved, but they would be able to tell if they saw me talk about it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I wanted to ask that question because I think it applies to people no matter what kind of business they run. If they're not staying true to what they think is the right thing for their brand, it's
Yeah.
problematic and people can tell. Um, so in 2004, you experienced what is, I would say, was a life-changing tragedy. You were in Sri Lanka during the Indian Ocean tsunami. It was I mean, I'm sure that it just changed everything about your entire life and how you think about every day that you live. But I specifically wanted to ask you how it impacts how you think about running a business, because I imagine that maybe some things just aren't that important and you don't worry about them. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Listen, in the immediate aftermath after the tsunami, nothing was important to me. So I had a book, my first book coming out. I had my first collection going into every going into every linens and things store across the country, and I couldn't get out of bed. So nothing was important, not the problems, not the achievements. Literally, it brought me to my knees, personally, professionally, everything. I had a team of people around me who didn't let my business fall apart in the immediate aftermath. But my biggest concern for myself was that I would never be able to function normally again. And normal for me is quite elevated. I like to be part of life. I like these meetings. I like going to design meetings. I liked being writing the book. I appreciate all of those things. I just didn't have the strength emotionally to do anything for a while. Once I started to get my strength back, what I would tell you is that the experience made me softer. It didn't make me less ambitious. It didn't make me less stressed about things that can go wrong or problems that arise, but it made me more compassionate as a person. And so the way I reacted to problems in business changed significantly. I was more concerned with how somebody felt delivering bad news to me than I was about the actual bad news. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think anyone who's been through a major family issue or it just puts things in perspective. So yes, it makes total sense. And thank you for answering that question.
Of course.
So we are going to talk about your book. You have a book coming out next week, actually, called Foundations. And you have four tenets of good design, and they are make it personal, embrace history, introduce character, and develop your vision. So I feel like that could also be a book about business. And I guess I would ask you, when you think about your own business, like kind of which of those four foundations do you feel like, or which couple of them do you feel like you really tie into when you are building your business?
I think, well, all four actually do apply. And this is the first time I've ever thought of that, but you're absolutely right. Um, I think of the four, probably making it personal resonates the most when I think about everyone out there trying to craft a business that matters to them, that will leave its mark in the world in some way. We all know when we're out of alignment, like when we're working in the wrong job or we're in the wrong career or um, in a bad relationship or living in the wrong house. Like I believe we can all feel when things just don't add up properly to make us feel like we're living to our potential and enjoying ourselves in the process. And I think that one of the most important things in business is to obviously to maintain that authenticity, but you have to allow yourself to be known, I believe, to be successful in business. And so making it personal feels like the most important of those because the more personal your business is, the more personal and the more of your personality that shines through in how you operate your business, I think the more successful you'll be.
We talked about, I mean, you've evolved over all these years. You started out just out of college. Now you're a father. You've been through all these phases of owning a business. How do you maintain a consistent brand while you personally are changing and evolving and getting older? I mean, you're not the same person you were 30 years ago.
No, but I think that I'm not. And I think that the brand evolves with me. You know, I've always had a tremendous amount of respect from my very first licensing deal when I was selling things with the Nate Berkus name on them at retail. I I I said to the CEO of the company at the time, if somebody has $50 left at the end of their paycheck and they go and buy something with my name on it, I need to make sure it delivers. Whether it's an occasional pillow or a set of bath towels, whatever it is, I won't put my name on junk. I just won't do it because I have so much respect for that $50 and what it took to earn that. And I still feel that way 30 years later. Probably now even more so with everything going on in the world and how insane everything is. And so I've never varied from my sort of awe that people out there would see something with my name on it and say, you know what, that must be a nice thing. That's what I'm going to pick. That's what I'm going to give as a gift, or that's what I'm going to gift myself. Um, I think that that's a little bit sacred, protecting a reputation like that. There's a sanctity in that, and a promise that is sort of unwritten. But if you think about the best brands out there, the most consistent brands out there, they stand for something. They mean something. The consumer at the end of the day feels safe and feels comfortable um, buying their products. And that's who I've always wanted to be.
My last question before I let you go. I'm addicted to reading advice columns. I don't know, it's my favorite thing. So I want to know from you, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given, personal or business?
Um, Two, I'll give you two. The first was Dr. Maya Angelou. Before we had children, Oprah was interviewing her about being a mother, and she admitted that she wasn't the mother that she thought she could have been, and she was disappointed in herself from that. But the as a result of that, but one thing that she said that she did feel that she did do right as a parent, she said, "Do your eyes light up when your child enters the room every time?" And as a new dad, um, in a same-sex marriage with all of these things swirling around when our daughter Poppy was born, um, I made sure that when our child entered the room, my eyes lit up and she felt that. So that I think is invaluable advice. The second was also with Dr. Angelou, and she said, "When people show you who they are, believe them the first time." And that has served me so well in personally and professionally over the years. I'll get a vibe from somebody in an initial meeting and I'll think, mm, I don't think this is going to work. Or I'll go to someone's home because they want to hire my firm to redo it or renovate it. And I'll know whether or not they're going to be a great client or awful. And believing who someone is when they show you the first time means that you act on that and you either steer clear um, or you dive headfirst in. I don't think there's a middle ground. And it's like the security expert Gavin DeBecker wrote a book called uh, sorry, I'm blanking on the name, but the entire book is about listening to your inner voice and trusting your instinct. And he framed that in terms of personal security, but I frame that in terms of professional success.
So, do you have any advice for everyone watching today who wants to be as successful as you someday?
I would just say, there's not one way, there's obviously not one path to success. Be careful about how you define success. It's certainly not about fame. It can be about fortune, but make sure your goals aren't empty. And don't forget to enjoy yourself um, along the way. My husband's 13 years younger than I. He's incredibly successful in the exact same field as I am. And um, I said to him once, well, the build is much more exciting than maintaining. And I watched him build, and he finally looked at me and said, I think I'm in the main maintenance phase. And I said, right, it feels different, doesn't it? He said, yeah, it really does. I finally understand what you were talking about. So don't lose the joy and the excitement of the build phase. It's the best phase. It really is.
Well, thank you so much. I think that's the perfect place to end. So, thank you so much, Nate Berkus. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nate's book, Foundations, will be out next week. Thanks to the audience for joining us, and thanks to our sponsors, Dell, Square, Oracle NetSuite, and Walmart Business. Thank you to everyone who joined me for all of our C-Suite to Main Streets this year. We'll be back next year with a whole bunch of great new guests. Until then, visit us at growwithco.com for inspiration and information on how to start, run, and grow your small business.